Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you with me for the first time, my name is Melissa Reed and I am a mixed media artist from Pennsylvania. So today I'm working with one of the cradled boards that I like. I got this one from Michaels, but I've also ordered some off of Amazon in the past. There are links to all of my most commonly used items in my description if you want to check any of those out. Normally I prime these first with gesso, but today I decided to just go in straight away with some paint. And I'm using their Liquitex Fluorescent Red and a little bit of Grumbacher Red, which is one of my favorite colors. And I've got Golden Brand Benzimidazolone Yellow, if I said that correctly, medium. And I'm also going in with some of the Liquitex Raw Umber there at the bottom next. And basically what I'm trying to do here is just get full coverage on this board. This is an 8 by 10. I don't think I mentioned that in the beginning. And all I'm doing is doing like a gradation of tone and color there from light to dark with that yellow down to the umber. And I'm not sure exactly how much of this is going to get covered, possibly all of it, possibly you'll be able to see a fair amount of it through there, but I want it back there just so that it's there, and whatever areas that I do leave blank are going to have visual meaning that's going to correspond to the rest of the piece. So I'm just going back and forth with some colors. I add a little bit of titanium white there, which you'll see when I add that on. It gets a little too cool for the colors that I have. I'm mixing it in though with some more of the yellow that I've got there just to really push those bright areas up there and really kind of make those pop against the dark areas at the bottom. And I'm using my blending brush to really get everything blended in well. I don't necessarily want to have a lot of brush strokes in this piece. I want everything to be smooth. I've got a flat brush there that I'm also going in multiple directions, really just to feather those edges out. Okay, so I've got my 8 by 10 inch jelly plate there and some of the artificial flowers. These are actually brand new ones that I just bought, and this is the first time I'm going to be printing with those. I'm using Payne's Gray as my printing color there and just spreading a nice layer onto my plate. I'm going to lay down those artificial flowers and get a good press on those, and I'll show you here what I'm going to do with those and how I'm going to incorporate them into the piece. Those little daisy type flowers at the top I end up not using, but I had just got those also and I wanted to see how they print. Didn't love the way they turned out. At least not for this print. I think if I was going to print those in the future, I would do them separately and not try to do them on a large sheet with other flowers because I don't think I gave them enough attention to get the detail from them that I really wanted. But you can see there that those flowers take really nicely. And what I'm doing is printing my pickup color to kind of match the colors in the background. I don't want it to be a perfect match exactly, but I do want them to be like colored because I've found that if I would have just left those printed in the Payne's Gray and then collaged them down with the matte medium just to get them, to be, I'll say clear, but it's going to be the tissue paper color, but you'd be able to see the color in the background. But it tends to add too much of a coolness when I'm using warmer colors. So I wanted to use the like colors in the background so that I don't have that stark contrast in a way that I'm not looking for in this piece. So once I got those printed up, I'm just cutting them out. Sometimes I do this with an X-Acto and sometimes I use scissors. It honestly just depends on the day, which one feels easier to me. That day I was using the knife, excuse me, but I did some more today and I used the scissors. It doesn't really matter. You just want to get the shapes out there. And I've found that when I'm doing these, it's really best to kind of go in and cut the individual petals out to some degree. Maybe not all of them, but you can see there that one that's laying near the top. You can see some of the individual petals. And I think that looks better than just having a big like circular blob, even though there's a flower shape printed in it. It just makes it look a little better for my purposes here, in my opinion. Once I've got these cut out, and I'm not sure how many I'm going to need, I do end up printing some more, but I'm pulling my board back onto the workspace there and just kind of arranging these in a way that I think might be pleasing. And you can see there what I meant by using the same colors. I think it just made the flowers make a little more sense on that surface. I do decide I want to print some more there in just slightly warmer colors. So those two at the top are the older ones. You might recognize those from previous videos. I print them all the time. I love these flower prints. And I'm doing a couple more of the new ones that I just got. That is also the Payne's Gray that I have down there. And these didn't need to be perfect. You can see those ones at the bottom didn't actually completely print out, but you can still get the idea of the flower from them. And that's perfectly fine because this doesn't need to be perfect. They're not going to be the focal point. They're actually going to be a background element, which you'll see in a few minutes what I end up doing with these. So I mixed some of the yellow and some of the some fluorescent orange actually as my pickup colors for this. And I'm picking up on tissue paper. I guess I should mention that if you couldn't tell. That's what I like to use in my collage. So I went ahead and got those cut out. And I'm just going to reposition everything. You can see how just adding that little bit of that other color really kind of changed the whole feel of the piece. And I like the way those all look together. So I'm going to get my corner pieces laid in first. You don't have to cut these out, obviously. I mean, you can just glue everything down and then once it's dry, turn it over and trim everything at the end. The reason why I did that was because I thought I might be able to use the rest of that flower somewhere else in the piece, and I didn't want to necessarily waste it and have to print some more. And I'm glad I did because I did end up using those other pieces here and there throughout the collage. And now I'm basically just randomly laying them down. I'm composition is always in the back of my mind, but I am not focusing on it per se because again, this is going to end up being the background of what I intend to do with the piece. Now, I am an intuitive artist, which typically means that I don't go into a piece with a fully formed idea. Sometimes I will just have an image or a color scheme or a technique, some kind of starting point, but I don't often know what the piece is going to look like in its entirety when I start into it. I really like the idea of letting what's going on the canvas or on the board become part of a conversation, and I will react to what I put down and, look at it, and often the piece will tell me what it needs next. And sometimes if I can't get any answers for that and I'm feeling a little bit stuck, it's really helpful just to set it aside for a while, a few hours or overnight, and then come back to it with a fresh perspective the next day. I do that in almost all of my pieces, and it really works for me. I don't know if you've had the same experience, you can let me know, but when I'm feeling stuck in the middle of a piece, that almost always works out for me. I'm going to get the rest of these flowers laid down there. And speaking of getting stuck, this is actually a piece that I am using to kind of break some artist's block. And I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit here. One of my favorite ways to overcome artist block is to look at my previous work. I'll just sit down and go through my Instagram or, my Facebook page, which, by the way, if you're interested, links to those are in the description as well. And I will often get a fresh inspiration from those. And that's what I did with this piece here. I'll put up at the end an image of the piece that I looked at to kind of get this inspiration. I've done work, a lot of the common themes in my work are these flowers, birds, obviously, if you have been with my channel for a while, you know that. And also these like spherical planetoid kind of shapes. And I'll put the one that I had in mind that inspired me to do this up at the end, as I said. So for this piece, I'm combining several of my themes. And I like to do that. It still makes your work a cohesive body because you're using your own themes to get inspiration, to draw inspiration. So I'm using the flowers and I'm using one of the spherical shapes. I got myself a circle drawn right in the center there. It is not dead center. I have a little extra space at the bottom because dead center doesn't always work out so well. Sometimes it does, but for me, I typically like things just to be slightly off from that. And I'm going in with some liquitex dioxazine purple there as the main color for the sphere. That's a really beautiful purple and it gives really good coverage. And so I'm painting over top of the flowers there that I have collaged on there, and those are going to be all covered up. I'm also adding a little bit of water to that to kind of blend it upwards, and I'm going to just be going in with a combination of that purple and some more of the yellow and orange to do some rough shading, I guess we'll call it. I love the contrast of that purple against the orange and yellow background. It's just such a beautiful combination, and you'll see the piece that I show you at the end. I used a similar, not the exact same colors because I made that one several years ago and I was using different paints, but it's a very similar kind of color profile there, and they just work so beautifully together. So I'm coming back in with my blending brush again, adding a little bit of water, and really I'm going to just be going back and forth here with different colors and shades. I'm using some more of the same colors again, like I said, in the background to add dimension to this, and I'm just going back and forth and really just creating some dimensionality in there. Now, you'll see me at a couple different places use my spray bottle here, and this is a great technique that I love to do just to create some interesting texture, and I'll show you what I mean here when we get to it in just a moment. If you take the water bottle on the paint that is wet or at least slightly damp still, give it a good spray, let it sit just for a few seconds just to make sure the water reactivates the paint that's underneath there, like you can see that I'm doing right there. And I'm just getting a shop towel and lifting up, and it's creating those wonderful speckled kind of patterns there, and it adds an interesting texture, and I wouldn't really be able to get that any other way unless I did like paint spatter, but it's a little harder to control, and without masking off everything around there that I didn't want to get the spatter on, it's a really good way to get a similar kind of texture without making a giant mess. And once that dried, I went back over it and added some more colors in there. I'm using a combination of my blending brush and a shop towel to blend everything together. I use whatever tool happens to be around that I think is going to give me the effect that I'm looking for there. Added in a little more titanium white, but then I thought it was just, like I said before, a little bit too cool and harsh. So I'm warming that back up again, and I'm just going back and forth here, kind of just creating a little bit of dimension and a little more texture. Now that I added more paint, I'm giving it another spray, letting it sit for a few seconds, and going back in with the shop towel to really add even more texture on top of that. That's a great way to get layers of that kind of texture. Just, put it down, spray your water, pick up the little beads with your shop towel, let everything completely dry, lay down more paint, and repeat as many times as you want to get those really great textures. It's a cool way to get colors come up from underneath. I really like the way it looks. So here I'm going in with a little more of the dioxazine purple, just again to add some dark areas. I mean, I kind of think of these spherical shapes as to be like kind of planetoid type things, and I'm just creating some peaks and valleys up there and really blending that in. I added a little more water again just to add more dimension and more layers of value. You can kind of do that right with the water on there. You're just thinning it out, especially when you have those textures underneath. When you have the thinned out paint, you can really see those come through. But again, I'll probably go in and re-add some more texture too, because it just gives such a neat effect. I really enjoyed making this, and I'm probably going to make a few more using these spheres. I mean, I definitely will at some point in my artistic life because like I said, I like to draw on past themes that I've used, combine them with other themes, and really create something that is truly uniquely my own. And I don't know, let me know if you ever do that in your own work. Do you revisit your previous styles and previous themes and combine them to make new pieces. I like the idea of doing that because then it really does make the work really your own. I know sometimes I can fall into the trap of I watch art videos constantly. And they're great because I will pick up new techniques or sometimes get an inspiration for something. But sometimes I will fall into the trap of wanting to make, the exact thing that that artist made, and that's not what I want to be doing. I want to take away a technique or an idea, but I don't want to create their piece because, well, that's plagiarism and not a good idea. But I like to then search for these things within my own work and really make sure that it is truly my own. But anyway, I'm going in here now around the piece with a little bit of the orange because it creates kind of like a glow. Instead of putting a shadow around it, which I had thought about doing, instead I'm just putting a nice bright glow with the orange around there. And I love the way this thing is turning out, honestly. So after I get finished doing this edging, I'm looking at it and it just didn't feel quite done. I thought about doing some line work, but I decided that for this one I was just going to go in, and I still had a few flowers left, and do some more collage around the top. I didn't want the whole thing completely encompassed in flowers, but I think that what I added really helped to bring it all together. Let me know what you think here. So I'm gluing those flowers down. Oh, incidentally, I'm using matte gel medium. I don't think I mentioned that in this video, but if you've been with me at all, that's always what I use as an adhesive. It's my favorite thing to use. I believe the one that I have here is liquitex, and I believe that there is a link for that in my description if you're interested. And I'm taking advantage of the fact that the tissue is wet and therefore easily ripped along that straight edge there, and I'm pulling those pieces off so that I can just go ahead and reattach them to the top there, making my work even easier. And who doesn't love a little bit of a break sometimes, right? So I'm going to get that finished up. I'm going to edge everything in black, and I'll be right back with you. Before I show you the finished piece, this is my inspiration piece. I'm going to put this up here just for a few seconds so you can see. And here she is all finished. I really like the way this turned out. And again, I am a big fan of reusing your own ideas to create new pieces. Let me know what you think. Did you enjoy watching this process? If you did, give me a thumbs up. It really helps out my channel. And if you haven't had a chance yet, hit that subscribe button. I put out a new video every single Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and I hope to see you back here with me next week. Have a good one.